guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We are here with the all-new BMW X2 in this very ugly parking lot on this very cold day to kind of walk you through what's so special about this new crossover. And I'm here with Sebastian Bell.
Hi guys.
And you might remember him from our Utility Vehicle of the Year video.
That's right.
Where he made his big debut by telling people he had a surprise in his pocket.
Almost the first thing I said on camera was totally embarrassing, so that's fun.
But it was completely innocent, but we'll never let you forget about it. And so what you might not know about Sebastian is that he manages like 50 of our sister sites. VW Vortex, Swede Speed is among them.
That's right.
Also Bimmerfest. So he's kind of considered our in-house BMW expert. He's going to kind of help us dissect what's going on here.
That's right. Very excited.
Cool. So I know when this car first debuted, BMW was like super adamant that it is so different from the X1, even though it's built on the exact same platform, with the exact same like chassis, exact same engine.
And within the logic of the BMW family, it's kind of a coupe version of the X1.
Exactly.
But it has this whole different personality.
Yeah, and
feeling.
they were using, those buzzwords like it's dynamic and it's youthful and it's fun. So do you think they actually lived up to those claims?
I actually do. It's as far as coupe or crossovers or whatever go, it's pretty special. It feels all its own. It doesn't really look like anything else on the road, and in the short time that I've had it, I've had a couple people sort of do a lap around it, sort of like put their fingers on their chin and be like, yeah, that's a neat car, man. So
yeah.
I think they did a good job. Like from the outside, it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the shape of it. I like the design. I wasn't too hyped about it at first, but when you see it kind of out there in the wild amongst other really boring, normal looking cars, it really stands out, especially with this crazy gold color, which I actually love.
For sure.
And one of the things that make it really different from the X1, I mean, like there are 0 body panels that are carried over from this and the X1. So it looks like a completely different car, even though underneath it's essentially the same thing.
Right.
So one of my favorite features about the new design is the new light signature that they have. So they have this really cool like hexagonal LED.
Right, and it looks a little bit like the Kidney Grill.
Yeah, and I think it kind of like elevates it, makes it look pretty luxurious, even though it's not that expensive.
And it's got that brushed aluminum around it, which I think looks really nice too.
This looks pretty cool actually. It goes a long way into helping it make it look aggressive in a small way. And I also really like the new grille.
For sure.
It's got a little bit of a shark nose vibe going on, which I love.
Yeah. It looks really good. It looks aggressive. It looks, I mean, as much as you can do a coupe SUV or crossover, it looks aggressive. It looks fun. It looks eager, and that's kind of carried over into the driving experience.
Yeah, that is very true. One of the things that surprised me the most about the X2 was how different its personality felt from the X1.
Right.
So like you drove the X1 recently, didn't love it. I drove the X3 recently, also wasn't that impressed. They just don't go above and beyond.
They're perfectly adequate.
Yeah, they're
that's
okay.
Not what you want from a BMW.
But they weren't fun.
Exactly.
I was really surprised that the X2 was legitimately fun.
No, it was a lot of fun.
It was fun to kind of like juke in and out of traffic. It takes a corner really nicely.
This one has the M Sport suspension, which does help out a lot. It makes it feel really tight and nimble. But as you say, this has the same 0 to 60 allegedly as the X1, and somehow it feels way faster.
Yeah, something about just the power delivery just seems a little bit more urgent. And I feel like the steering is a little bit more engaging. It just feels crisper and tighter all around.
Very true.
But we'll touch on the driving dynamics later. Just going back to the style a little bit more. The thing that it also does differently from the X1 is all of this like plastic body cladding, which is actually like not too obnoxious.
No, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, it actually looks pretty good.
As you pointed out, this is a little bit, like it's kind of weird that that's the only part of the cladding that isn't covered in plastic.
So like, I don't know if you guys know anything about off-roading, but like, this part is the part that needs the plastic body cladding because this is the stuff that'll get damaged when you're off-roading. So the fact that it's up here and not down here is kind of weird. And we did have a viewer question about whether or not it's capable off-road.
I haven't actually driven it off-road yet, but it does have a hill descent mode. It's got full-time, not symmetrical, but full-time all-wheel drive.
Yeah, that's correct.
And, I mean, as much as most other crossovers are, I think it's going to be...
I mean, you made a point that it only has like about this much more ground clearance over like a Golf.
Yeah, this has 180 millimeters about, and the Golf has about 140, so that's I mean, it's more.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a Jeep.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you're not going to be able to go to friggin' Moab with this.
Well, and you can tell just by the way it looks, and by the way that the actual rock shields don't cover anything that you would actually do
Yeah,
off-road.
exactly. Some other things that make it a little bit different are the generous use of badges.
Right.
So this is actually the first car that BMW is bringing back this design cue on.
Right, that's
And this is
from
kind of like a retro throwback to classic BMWs, which
on
did
the
this.
3.0 CSL
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
We have theories, though, that people are saying, oh, they just put extra badges because BMW drivers just want everyone to know that they're driving BMWs from all angles.
From as many angles as possible.
So this new badge is kind of a neat touch.
It's all right.
The reactions are kind of mixed on it. Like, some people think it's a little bit extra.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind it because it's a crossover. Anything that you can make it, help it stand out kind of helps.
And I think just in the general look of the thing, it looks okay. It's not distracting, but it looks kind of neat. But
Yeah.
speaking of badging, you also get a bunch of M badging with this package. So you get little M badges over there.
So there's a lot of cosmetic M upgrades to this
That's
one. So this
right.
is not a base model.
No. You get M badges on the door sills. So many M badges everywhere.
And it's funny because it's not a real M car.
No, it doesn't have any more power.
Yeah.
It's just
I do appreciate that extra that suspension package that it gets. That
No.
makes it,
it feels good, certainly.
yeah, at least it feels sportier instead of just looking sportier, which always bothers me.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is that, so it's a coupe-ified version of the X1, which means it suffers a little bit in the practicality
This
department.
actually really surprised me how
Yeah.
much less cargo capacity it has than the X1.
Yeah, so I have the values right here, and I'll open it for you in a second. But so I just want to point out how cool this is also.
That's it. I like that.
I like that. It's just a neat touch.
Yeah.
But if you go inside there, this actually has 50.1 cubic feet with the seats down and 21.6 with the seats up. And that's actually a pretty big difference from the X1, which has 58.7 with the seats down and 27.1 with the seats up. So it actually suffers a lot with the cargo capacity.
Right, which I wouldn't have thought to just look at it, because it doesn't seem that much smaller or anything like that. But that's
Yeah.
a fair, you're losing a lot of cargo capacity there.
Yeah, I mean, you gain style, but you lose a bit of practicality.
Right.
The other thing that makes it slightly less practical than the X1 is that it has like a smaller opening for stuff, so
For
you won't
sure.
be able to fit in as many larger items.
That's right. This should only fit like a 35-inch TV, not a 40 or a 45-inch TV. Just don't even
Yeah.
get me started on that.
I mean, so if you're buying based on practicality, this might not be the best pick.
Right.
But if you're buying on style and driving dynamics, I think it kind of makes up for it.
And that's kind of the point of this car. And
Yeah.
if that's the sacrifice that they're making, that seems worthwhile. That seems all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about driving dynamics a little bit, because we
Right.
touched on it a little bit earlier. And again, I was just really surprised about how fun this was. Like, I never expect crossovers to kind of have that personality, but Sebastian made a really good point earlier that he said it just feels like a hot hatch.
Well, it kind of does, and that's kind of borne out in it doesn't have that much more height than a hot hatch. It kind of looks like a hot hatch,
Yeah.
and it drives and feels like a hot hatch. And I think that has a lot to do with it being based on a mini platform, which a lot of purists will complain about because it's front-wheel drive based. But honestly, that's such a great platform, and
It
I
is.
love the Mini so much.
It's so much fun.
It's so good.
Yeah, like
that-
legitimately fun.
Yeah. It's a great platform. So I think this benefits a lot from that. Whereas the X1, I felt like it really neutered that chassis, and it really made it feel kind of like dull. This feels like a bunch of fun. Like, you get
Yeah.
in it, and when you push the gas pedal, you get launched back in your seat, and when you dart around in traffic, if you have to make a gap, it feels really active, and it feels like you can really get into that gap. So that's
Yeah. I really enjoyed how nimble this felt.
Yeah.
Like, we drive a lot in the city. I live right downtown,
Right.
and it felt fine.
yeah, it feels good.
And also, it wasn't super, like, the suspension wasn't super crashy over broken roads or anything like that. It was still comfortable, yet still being sporty.
Yeah.
And that was even in comfort mode.
Yeah.
So, like, when you dial it up to sport mode, everything just gets sharper and a little bit more responsive. but it still didn't feel uncomfortable.
For sure. And it sounds good. Like I was
Surprisingly, yeah.
I know. When you run through the gears and you get it all the way up to, it goes up to like 6,500 RPM or something.
Yeah, and sport mode holds it all the way up to red line
yeah,
too, which
it'll
surprised
go.
me.
And it sounds good, and it's got a little bit of burble on the overrun.
Yeah.
It feels good. Like you're driving around, and you're like, oh, crap, I kind of like this thing.
I know. I had that same reaction where I was like, oh, why do I like this? But I did.
Yeah.
So let's pop the hood a little, and I'll show you what's underneath. I can do it.
Okay. Here's the other weird thing about this, is that it doesn't require you to go under and fiddle around with anything. It just opens right up.
Which is actually so nice.
Yeah, that is actually nice.
So this is powered by a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. And again, like it's the same one in the X1.
Yeah.
And it has 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque.
And it'll do 0 to 60 in 6.3 seconds, which is pretty good. I mean, it's fine. That's acceptable.
The thing is that it feels faster than the numbers would suggest.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Especially if those are the same numbers on the X1, because the X1 feels so slow compared to this.
Right? It's just crazy how different they are. Like
Yeah.
BMW wasn't making it up when they said that the X2 is so different from the X1.
No, it really does feel good. And that 8-speed auto feels pretty good too. I mean, it'll run through your gears and... It's
pretty snappy.
It's pretty snappy, but it's also pretty smooth when you just want to settle down and be in eco mode, which is I appreciate.
Nobody does that.
No.
Let's just be real. Nobody does that. It just makes it feel way too slow and boring. But in comfort mode, it's great.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy driving it.
That's right.
Why don't we hop inside for a little bit and we'll kind of show you what's going on in there.
Right, and to me this is the one area where the car really falls down, is because you get this jazzy, snazzy exterior full of like this gold color, and then you get inside and it's a big womp womp.
I actually don't think it's that bad. Like, what you gotta remember is that, let me just put on my seatbelt so it stops dinging at me. So what you have to remember about this car is that it's not an expensive car.
Right.
And BMW did a really good job in making, plastics look good.
That's true.
Like, look at this. Like, this is a pretty nice touch, but this is just plastic.
Right.
But they kind of just elevated it a little bit.
I just wish there was any color in here at all. It's so gray and black.
Yeah, I mean, it's very BMW.
That's true.
I mean, BMW isn't really well known for their expressive interiors, right? Like,
right. And I just think that would have been nice to have a little bit of that, given how, exciting and new the exterior is.
yeah.
This is where inside this is where you notice that it's an X1, because it feels and looks a lot like it.
That's a good point. It does. Although I feel like the interior for this is a lot more Mini influences.
Okay.
Does the X1 have this gear shifter?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I believe it does.
Okay, so this gear shifter actually comes like pretty much right out of the Countryman.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit chunky, but I kind of prefer it because the other BMWs have that like electronic joy shift.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it.
And I don't love it. So this one is actually okay.
Yeah, it feels connected.
What do you think about the infotainment system?
The infotainment system's all right. There's a bit of a learning curve, but once you get it, there's a lot to sink your teeth into. I pointed out in the X1, I liked the local wiki feature where you can look up what's around you and see and read about it. So I now know more about Lord Lansdowne than I ever did before, which is exciting. Also a little bit dangerous because I was driving at the time and shouldn't have been reading. But anyway.
So it's kind of distracting, even though it's a little bit useful.
It's a little bit, and if you're a passenger, I guess it's okay.
So one thing I really like about this system is that it gives you the option to use the keyboard when it's parked.
That's right.
Which is really nice because I hate having to scroll through letters.
The scrolling feature is terrible. It never works in any phone.
It's just awful,
Yeah.
and it's so distracting when you're trying to drive. It just does not work, but at least this gives you the option when you're parked. The other thing I'm not too happy about is how much... Like, look at how dusty this is right now. And this is just after less than a week of driving it.
And after being perfectly clean, too. My problem with piano black is that it's always it feels like it's just there to get dirty. It's like a stainless steel fridge. It's like the only thing it's going to do is get fingerprints on it and
it's just
dust.
a dust magnet, which really bothers me. The other thing I have to point out that I know a lot of people will be so annoyed at is the volume button.
Oh.
Because the symbol doesn't turn. So if you like your volume here, you're gonna have to live with it being off kilter.
That's right.
Which I know a lot of people will be bothered by that.
That's hilarious.
Other than that, I think the interior is actually quite comfortable. I like these seats.
Yeah.
They're really like pretty aggressively bolstered, which is nice. There's a lot of adjustability in them.
And I agree. I think they're pretty comfortable. I like these in between the seats where the seat in my pocket is.
We're gonna make this an ongoing theme
It's
in
just
every
going to
video.
be my thing now. I'm going to lean into it. But I like these because I do, my sciatica is ridiculous. But I do like having something under, I have long thighs.
You have very long thighs, yeah. For me, like when I got in the car after you, it's like I couldn't even put my feet to the ground. It was hilarious. But we did have a user question about back seat comfort.
Oh, okay.
So why don't you hop back
Shall we
there?
jump
Because I
back?
know you're taller and it might be more of an issue for you.
Okay, so with Jody in the front seat, it's actually not bad. I've got a lot of space back here, but with somebody as tall as me, it's a little tighter. My knees are kind of banging into the seat. It's not the most comfortable.
How's the headroom?
The headroom's pretty good, actually. The headroom's great.
Okay.
I can move my head around. I really have to try to bump my head against the top, so, you know, I think that's pretty good. And the seats they're back seats. They're fine.
Right.
If you're little, maybe you won't mind.
I mean, from the inside, it feels a little bit, I don't want to say cramped, but it does feel a little bit cozy, right?
Certainly. Cozy is
Yeah.
the right word for it.
Okay, cool. So the other thing we kind of have to talk about is pricing. So you can get a base front-wheel drive model for about 36 grand and an all-wheel drive one for about 38 grand.
Which is pretty reasonable.
Which is pretty reasonable, but then of course it's a BMW and options will add up so quickly.
And you're never just gonna get a base BMW.
Exactly.
So the one that we bought here, or are driving here,
We can't afford this.
I know. We're millennials. What can we afford? So anyway, the one that we have here with all the options with the M Sport suspension and all of that ended up costing about $52,000, which is kind of a lot of money. When you
Kind of
think.
a lot for something like this.
But if you think about it as a hot hatch, that is kind of in the pricing area. So you know, it kind of makes sense there.
Okay, cool. So it has the style, it has the performance.
That's right.
The downsides would be slightly less practicality.
Yeah.
A kind of, lackluster interior.
I think it's a pretty meh interior,
Yeah.
but yeah. And then otherwise, it looks pretty good. So
Yeah. I mean, so this X2 has a lot going for it. I think it's one of the more interesting crossovers that
For sure.
BMW is doing right now.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the better looking coupe SUVs that they have.
Yeah.
It doesn't look nearly as awful as the X4 or the X6. This actually pulls it off quite nicely.
that's right.
So thank you, BMW.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in. If you kind of like this format for car reviews, let us know and we can do stuff like this in the future. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe and all that good stuff. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Bye.